And I still made you hang out?
Please don't put this in the show.
Welcome back to This Week in Film. It's the weekly podcast where we get together and talk about the movies we've seen over the past 7 days. I'm Nick Panunto, joined as always by Midwest Matt Lauer. Matt, how's it going?
It's going all right over here, Nick. I'd ask how you're doing, but I know you're kind of sick.
I'm a little under the weather, but I'm going to push through for the sake of the movies I've seen.
All you listeners, put out good vibes for Nick's healing. Although he'll probably be fine by the time you hear this, but, you know.
Thanks for all the vibes.
He'll get those retroactive vibes. And it sounds like he's going to do something dirty with them, so.
And now I'm more powerful than ever. Like I said, I saw one movie this week from 2019 called Klaus, which I believe is a Netflix movie.
What the hell is that?
It's a Netflix movie. And what did you see?
Well, I'm a little surprised because I thought, for reasons I won't get into detail here, that you watched a movie called Rambo Last Blood.
Oh my God, why didn't you tell me you watched that? I was going to watch that today, but then I was like, I don't feel great.
Because I thought you did watch it. So I watched Rambo Last Blood.
Oh, God.
And a movie called Ready or Not.
Oh, those are two movies I wanted to see. Well, I guess you can start first since you saw the most amount of movies.
All right, sure. I'll start with Ready or Not.
Man, I woke up so early today because I just wasn't feeling good, as we've already talked about. And I was like, oh, I could watch that Rambo movie. And I was like, I don't feel great. I don't want to see Rambo blow people up right now. Well, now I realize that I did want to see that.
Well, that's definitely in there, but more on that later. So, in this movie, Ready or Not, also a 2019 movie, Grace, played by Margot Robbie Jr., also known as Samara Weaving, is about to marry into a super rich family. But
lucky?
What's that?
Lucky?
Oh, not quite so lucky. Because as it turns out, this super rich family has some weird plans. And so basically they are like, you know what? As soon as the wedding itself is over, they're like, before you're actually allowed into the family, you got to play this game with us. She's like, sure, a game. Oh, rich people are weird. And she draws a card in this game, sort of like choosing what the game actually is. And it turns out that the game is a game of danger.
Oh.
Yeah. Also, Samara Weaving, for some of you who've seen...
Danger!
What? What is that?
Isn't that Busta Rhymes?
Oh, the game of danger. Sorry. The timing was a little delayed there, so... yeah, so
Busta Rhymes are mystical.
Mystical!
Yeah.
We've both got our impressions. We probably shouldn't do anyway. So, hi, listeners, talking about something here. Oh, yeah, Samara Weaving. If you've seen the Netflix movie, The Babysitter, which is actually a pretty fun movie, there's a quick recommend on that. She plays the titular babysitter. She draws this card and chooses the danger game. And then throughout I guess leading up to this, it doesn't take very long to, especially if you've seen the preview, to see where it's going. But, you know, it's got a lot of weird people in this family, and you can tell it's like, oh, they're nefarious motives, and they're rich people, so they're like super judgmental and stuff. And it just really turns into a kind of a simple cat and mouse kind of thing with dark humor and just like a lot of weirdness to it. It's kind of like a really, I don't know if crude or roughly done version of, it's got sort of a Knives Out feel to it. In that none of the characters are really likable, and it's kind of funny, but it's definitely not as good as Knives Out. Mm-hmm. It was entertaining, though. And also in this, I don't know that anyone else in it's very famous, but Andie MacDowell is in this.
Oh.
She plays the rich mother, and she does a pretty good job. I've not seen many things with Andie MacDowell in it, and I know some people really don't like her, but I found her to be pretty good.
I'm always like happy when I see Andie MacDowell.
Well, you should get around to checking this out then. I think you'll enjoy it. It's got kind of a Happy Death Day sort of vibe going on, sort of tongue-in-cheek.
Okay.
So there are some pros and some cons. So the stuff that's kind of on the weaker side is that a lot of the jokes that are kind of word-based jokes, with like things people say that's supposed to be funny, aren't quite that funny. Not all of them, but some of them. There are certain sorts of twists.
Can we go back a second?
Yeah.
What do you mean word-based joke?
Okay, so some jokes are kind of... No, not necessarily, but some jokes are, it's the timing or it's the tone that makes it a joke. And some jokes, it's just, that person's saying that thing and the words they're saying are supposed to be funny. If you see a comedian do jokes and you go like, oh yeah, you could repeat the joke and it would actually be funny because the words are funny. And other things where you're like, no, it's not really the joke. It's not the words. It's the way they say it. You can't really imitate it unless you just happen to be that person. Or if it's a movie and it's just timing and it's like a look on a person's face, like the reaction shot.
Okay.
The word stuff is not great, at least not all the time. The other stuff, on the other hand, the timing, the sort of understatedness of things, the reaction shots especially, are funny. Or it'll be something someone says, but in the context of that moment, it's funny. It's not like a joke being made, but it's just funny the way that they react. There's a lot of that. And those things go well. Those things go really well. There are some twists in terms of like seeing how characters actually view things that aren't really all that convincing, but it's not a movie that's taken itself very seriously at all. So it doesn't really hurt it, I don't think. The premise of it is very strange, like why they're doing the game. And I'll leave that for watching the movie. But I'll say that it didn't really work for me. And it sometimes, even though it's meant to be tongue-in-cheek, some of the cartoonishness of the movie didn't work for me that much either. But on the other hand, those are just some moments. And the rest of it overall it's a pretty movie. I think there's a lot of dark, kind of contrasty colors that are a bit oversaturated, and I like the aesthetic a lot. Samara Weaving, she's fun. She kind of, I guess it would be easy to say she reminds me of, what's her name? Jessica Roth from Happy Death Day. But it would be easy to say that because they look similar in terms of like blonde, big eyes, but also in the good acting sense, and this sort of like tongue-in-cheek humor, like her timing and her expressions and stuff are really good for it. And I remember that being the case too for The Babysitter. So I hope that she gets to be in more stuff. She's pretty cool. The pace of the movie's good. I noticed at some point while I was watching, I was like, I feel like the rising and falling action here and there, and like the space between the beats is really plotted out pretty well. And some of the twists that aren't based on what I was talking about before. Mostly a couple things that happen at the end. They're goofy, but they made me laugh. And I think at some point, I look forward to watching this again at some point, because once I really had kind of absorbed the tone of the movie and the lack of seriousness, which I should have just jumped into easily at the beginning, because like the first thing that happens that's plot-wise, like here's a beat, is ridiculous. It's just super ridiculous. And I don't know if I was just quite realizing it was going to be that much of a humor movie, so I wasn't warmed up for it. So if I watch it again, I think I'm going to enjoy it right from the jump. And yeah, and I would definitely, if you like horror comedies, I definitely recommend it. Nick, I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing that movie. It's on my list of many movies to watch. It looked quite entertaining, much like you said, in that Happy Death Day kind of way. And the buzz about it was that it was kind of a fun movie. So
yeah, I had heard some reviews, and I think they were a little more critical than I was expecting from the previews. Like, I thought it looked pretty good from the previews, but never had that spelled out, or never really took in anyway that it was more of a comedy than a horror movie. There's a lot of gore, so it still falls pretty well into that sort of like, it's not a house invasion movie, but that sort of thing. There's no slasher or anything like that.
Okay, great.
That's all I got on that.
Okay. Well, then that brings me to the movie that I watched this week, called Klaus. This movie, like I said, was from 2019. It is directed by Sergio Pablos and Carlos Martinez Lopez, and it's an animated film that stars the voice talents of Jason Schwartzman, J.K. Simmons, Rashida Jones, and Will Sasso. And for some reason, Norm Macdonald and Joan Cusack are also in it. Kind of an eclectic cast. Uh-huh. And basically, this is the story of Santa Claus Begins. So if you take the plot of Batman Begins, but Santa instead.
So at some point in the movie, is he like, swear to me?
Santa's like, at one point Rudolph is like all strung out on heroin or something, and he's like, I don't have to save you either. and no, that doesn't happen. But it's basically it's basically Batman Begins for Santa. It starts off with Jason Schwartzman is the son of some wealthy head of the post office or something in Norway, and he's this spoiled brat, and he's training to become a mailman, but he doesn't really want to do it, and he knows if he flunks out, he can just, go home. So that's basically what he's doing.
Wait, hang on. Let me just make sure I get the tone of this right. What's the, is this a G-rated movie? Is this a kid's movie?
I think it's PG, but it's a family film. Yeah, it's
okay.
PG.
Okay.
But it's totally a family film.
Gotcha.
So Jason Schwartzman, he gets called to his father's office at like the head postal building or whatever, and he's like, oh no, this didn't work out, I guess I'll just go home to my silk sheets. And the dad's like, nope, we're sending you to the farthest post office in the north, to a town called Schmierensburg, which is a funny name. The more you hear it, the more I enjoyed the word Schmierensburg. And you're going to be the postman there, and you have 1 year to process like 6,000 letters or post. And if you don't, you're cut off from me completely. So basically, the spoiled kid gets sent to this crap hole in the north,
where he has to process 30 letters a day.
Something like that. In this town, everyone in the town hates each other. It's like it's the old west of those two families that hate each other.
The Hatfields and the McCoys.
Yes, it is just like that, where there's like one part of the town which is the dark-haired, evil-looking people, and then there's the other side of the town which is all the red-headed, ginger, soulless people, because red-headed people don't have souls. So he gets to this town.
Nick's wife got total red hair.
It's
and
true.
I guess your kids probably do too. Or something in between.
Sort of. It depends on the light that's hitting them.
I see.
So he gets to this town. Everyone hates each other. Everyone hates him. And he's like, oh, I'm so screwed. He's got nothing going on. And then somehow he's like walking around one day, just like trying to collect the mail, but nobody's mailing anything because everyone hates each other. And this one kid drops a letter or a picture out his window because he's like locked in his room from his like abusive father. And the kid's like,
sure,
hey,
this is a kid's movie.
Yeah, totally sure. And the kid's like, hey, can I have that back? And the Jason Schwartzman's like, oh, gee, I'd love to give it back to you, but I'm a mailman and I have to mail it back to you. The kid's like, what? And he's like, yep. He's like, I could put it in this envelope, but you're going to have to give me a penny for the stamp. And anyway, he basically tries to blackmail this kid into giving him a letter, and it's pretty funny, and then it ends awkwardly. But then for whatever reason, the letter gets blown away to this creepy old man who lives in the woods, and he basically, long story short, he's Santa. He's just like this. He's just this creepy, scary man who lives in the woods, who's had a lot of sadness in his life, and he has all these toys that he made for specific reasons that I'm not going to spoil. But he has all these toys, and he gets the letter that this kid dropped because it's just a picture of him playing with a new toy, and the Santa forces the mailman to drive him around to deliver this present, and the kid gets the present and he's like, oh my god. And then the next day he shows up at the post office and he's like with a letter to ask for another present.
Selfish brat.
Well, yeah. And the mailman is like, oh, I know how to get my letter quota now. So he starts telling all the kids in town that if they write letters to this guy, they'll get presents. So it like goes on, it gets big, it starts getting bigger and bigger in this town. And then like the real jackassy kids come over, and the one kid's like, hey man, I wrote a letter and I didn't get a present. And then he starts telling him, he's like, yeah, well, you know what? You're on the naughty list. He's like, that guy checks the list all the time.
Oh, like twice.
And you're on it. Yeah. That's how like they twist all like the Santa Claus stuff into it. And it's all basically because this mailman makes it up. It all works pretty well. It's a pretty fun story. It's really beautifully animated. It's a gorgeous movie. There was something in the trivia that I read that I was going to mention. It says that the way it was animated is the guy who directed it, Sergio Pablos, wanted to do a traditionally animated feature film, but he wanted to see how the animation would have evolved without the switch to computer-generated animation. So the studio used CG lighting techniques with hand-drawn animation, which is what gives it its unique kind of look, and it's gorgeous. It is phenomenal to look at. The only real complaints that I have about the movie are the voice acting. For the cast that they have, I would think that I would have loved the movie because I just really enjoy just about everything Jason Schwartzman does. J.K. Simmons is great. All the other people in it are good. But it has the feel of a movie where it was made in a foreign language and this is the English translation. And I was pretty sure that that was the deal with this, but I can't find anything with the original voice actors, so I could be just completely off base. But the voice actors don't quite fit the characters. It's just, everything's just kind of off a little bit. And it might just be because it's this Norwegian town and everyone just has an American accent except for this one group of
pretty strange
of foreign people. I don't know if it's distracting or if it's just the way that the voices are recorded, but I don't know. It just didn't completely work for me, but the movie itself had me cracking up the whole time. Like there were moments where I was laughing out loud or lolling, as the kids say. So,
speaking of kids, were you watching this with your kids?
I did watch it with my kids, and my son watched the whole thing. He really enjoyed it. The twins, who are 2, watched about half of it before they got bored, and my eldest daughter watched it about 3/4 of the way through before she got bored. So that's pretty good for an animated movie, and it's only an hour and a half long, so it was pretty quick. It was quite good. If you've got some time to kill and you want to watch like a fun new Christmas movie, I would really recommend checking it out. It was charming and beautiful to look at. And just the way that they set up like the Santa Claus legend stuff is done in a way where you're like, oh, I get it. Okay, that was clever.
And you said this was a movie made by Netflix?
It's a Netflix movie, but it could be one of those things where they just bought it.
Right, but it wasn't in the theater or anything?
No, not that I know of. But
so I was like, I've never heard of this.
It just came out recently.
I guess
last month.
Season.
It came out last month, yeah. That's really, I think, all I have for Klaus.
Okay. Rambo Last Blood. Now, see, I wrote notes on this in a way I wouldn't normally because I thought we were both going to be reviewing it. Lesson learned.
Why did you think I was going to watch Rambo?
I didn't think you were going to. I was thinking you had. So, Rambo Last Blood. This is what, the 5th Rambo movie?
That's right.
All right. And I don't know, Nick, how about you summarize Rambo 1 through 4?
Okay.
Just set up who this guy is a little bit.
Rambo, or the first movie called First Blood, is the story of a Vietnam veteran who's making his way through, I want to say, Washington State?
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. And he's kind of homeless, but he's just kind of a wanderer.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. Drifter.
And it's post-Vietnam, and we didn't really take care of not that we do a great job of it now, but we really didn't take care of our war veterans in the post-Vietnam era. And he's walking through this town, and Brian Dennehy is like, get out of my town. and Rambo's like, I don't want to do that. And Brian Dennehy's like,
get prepared for more of that.
I'm going to do a whole lot of it.
And I'm going to be doing some of it too. It might be a little less spoiler alert here on the review. It might be a little less audible when it gets to be my turn.
Brian Dennehy's trying to kick Rambo out of the town. His name's John Rambo, and Rambo's like, I don't want to leave, and I'm just making my way through. And then David Caruso is in it too, and he's like a baby. And then Brian Dennehy pushes John Rambo too far, and he kind of snaps because he's special forces / a Green Beret or whatever. He snaps and goes crazy in the woods. And his old colonel shows up and he's like, hey, I hear you got Rambo in your woods here. That's bad news for you guys because he's the world's perfect killing machine. and Brian Dennehy's like, we got it. And then Rambo proceeds to kill a whole bunch of policemen who are trying to arrest him for existing until he starts killing policemen. And then they're trying to arrest him for murder. I think at one point he kills David Caruso in the prison. I think he slits his throat. It's been a while since I've seen it. Anyway, Rambo or First Blood, pretty good movie.
Yeah, so in the first movie, John Rambo is a emotionally wounded veteran. He's not some sort of superhero type person. He does. I mean, he gets stuff done, but the killing machine thing gets someone puts it on speed for part 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the first one, it's kind of a subdued almost performance where he's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder before we called it that, and at the same time committing atrocities like he did in Vietnam, and he just wants it all to end. And there's actually a deleted or an original ending to the movie where he kills himself, which I believe is the ending of the book that it's based on, where Rambo kills himself at the end. They shot it, but then I guess they just changed it because he lives and they make 4 more sequels. But the first movie is pretty intense and very good. Then we move on to Rambo, First Blood Part 2.
And Rambo goes from suffering to...
Yeah. So I think I'd have to look it up, but I'm trying to remember. Because like in the first Rambo, Stallone is like built, but he's not ripped. Like he's not huge. He's not Rocky IV huge. He just looks like a really fit guy, but it's post Rocky.
Then he turns into an action hero. The first movie isn't exactly an action movie. I mean, it's got some action in it, but it's definitely got more drama.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely more of a drama with some action sequences. The second movie is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Where it's so Rambo or First Blood came out in 1982. So Rocky 2 came out in 79. Rocky 3 came out in 1982. So he's built like he is in Rocky 3. And then Rambo First Blood Part 2 came out in 1985, which is the same year as Rocky 4, where Stallone is at his most ripped ever. Mm-hmm. So he goes from just being like a built guy to the most muscular man south of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He turns into the most muscular man any average person could hope to become. And I forget what the inciting incident is for Rambo 2, but basically he's got to go back to Vietnam to save some POWs because some military guy like got them trapped there. It's not Brian Dennehy again. Oh, it's Charles Napier. He plays Murdoch. And so Stallone and Colonel Troutman go to Vietnam.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause you there.
Please.
So listeners, Matt, me, never had any interest at all in seeing any of these movies. None at all. And Nick, him, insisted that I watch these movies with him. These and probably not even probably after giving me any sort of recovery time from watching
we watched them all in
RoboCop. Oh yeah, and no recovery time in between these movies. Yeah. And as he's describing this second movie, I gotta tell you, I don't remember any of this. And I'm not gonna remember any of the third one either.
Oh, the third one is very forgettable.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like I said, he's trying to rescue like old Vietnam POWs who are still trapped there and basically still trying to win the Vietnam War, even though it was a war that America lost. But Rambo is back, so he's going to try to win. And a bunch of stuff happens. I'm pretty sure he shoots down a helicopter with a bow and arrow, but that could be in the third one.
Yeah, well, that's possible.
That's either the this one or the next one. Anyway, so that's this one. And then at the end of the movie, he goes up to Charles Napier, who plays Murdoch. And he goes, like, you think he's going to stab him in the head with his giant Rambo knife, which gets bigger and bigger with each movie. And he like stabs the table and he's like, "They're out there. Find them," referring to all the POWs that were still in Vietnam, still trapped there. And that's basically how that movie ends. And then we go to Rambo 3. So the first one's called First Blood. The second one is called Rambo First Blood Part Roman numeral 2.
What?
Yeah.
That's the worst.
And then the third movie is just called Rambo 3 with 3 Roman numerals. And Rambo 3 is the story of how Rambo teams up with Osama bin Laden to stop the Russians' invasion of Afghanistan. And I'm not exaggerating. That is the plot of this movie, is that Rambo teams up with the Mujahideen, who eventually, some subsect, turn into the Taliban and a lot of geopolitical stuff that around the turn of the century, they were the ones involved with September 11th. Al-Qaeda. And Osama bin Laden was a freedom fighter. I did air quotes there. In Afghanistan. You can tell.
You did a good job of conveying that.
In Afghanistan during the Soviet invasion, and the American CIA went in undercover and basically trained them how to be an army to fight off the Russians in a proxy war. And then we learned our lesson about going into Afghanistan and how it would be a boondoggle, as they say.
In so we learned that lesson.
Right. And so Rambo teams up with Osama bin Laden. There's a very long sequence of them playing some sort of game where they're on a horse playing polo with a dead goat.
You know, I don't know that we need to get into all this.
I had to spend like half an hour watching this scene. I'm not going to not talk about it. I read something, or I heard something recently, that the horse that Rambo rides in that movie is the same horse that Indiana Jones rides in Last Crusade.
Oh, way to go, horse.
Yeah.
So the third one's a huge action movie too, and
it's god awful.
Oh,
it's almost unwatchable.
All I
hate
remember is that it was terrible.
It's so bad.
And then the fourth one. Oh, go ahead.
But Rambo is so huge. He's just built out of muscle. Like, I think it's either this one or the second one where it starts off with him in Thailand or something, and he's having like a stick fight where he's like beating the crap out of some guy in like a fight, a gambling fight.
Mm-hmm.
Sanctioned? I don't know. What do you call that? And so he's and Colonel Troutman shows up and he's like, "Hey, Rambo, I need you to do another mission for me." And Rambo's like, "My war's over." And Troutman's like, "Well, I'm still going to go." And then he gets captured by the Soviets and Rambo's like, "Well, I guess I got to go save him." And so that's the plot, is he's got to just go get him. And then 20 years go by.
Yeah.
And it's time for the new Rambo movie, just called Rambo.
Good plan, producers. Yeah. So we go from a torn up, suffering, kind of low-key guy who wants to just pretty much disappear to this ridiculous action hero for 2 movies. And then in this fourth movie, in Rambo, what would you say he is there?
In this movie, he's just a guy trying to make his way in the world.
Okay.
And then this group of Christian aid workers show up. According to IMDb, he's in Thailand near Burma. And they say, "Hey, we're going to Burma because, you know, Jesus, and we're going to change things." And Rambo's like, "Did you bring any weapons?" And the girl is like, "Nope." "Well, you ain't changing nothing." And she's like, "Well, if you could please just give us a ride in your terrible looking boat, we'd appreciate it." And something goes wrong. I don't remember. They get captured. And Rambo's like, "Well, I guess I gotta go save them because she's a blonde lady." And Rambo...
Played by the wife of Dexter, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, is that who that is?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Julie Benz, according to the
Sure.
thing here. I'm not going to click on her picture.
Fair enough.
So Rambo then forges himself an even larger knife out of metal, and then goes on a killing parade, the likes of which I have never seen. He kills so many people, and it's glorious. I love this movie. I saw this movie in theaters twice. It's so over the top violent. It's really stupid, but you're not there for the story. You're there to watch Rambo kill people, and it delivers. It delivers in almost every way possible. He's got at one point he's got a giant machine gun that he steals and turns it on this guy and just turns him into flying meat. It's like a lot of practical effects for a movie like this. You'd expect there to be a lot of digital blood, and it doesn't look like that at all. Like, it looks like a lot of really well done blood effects, and he just massacres the Burmese army trying to rescue these people. And like at one point he like slices this one dude in half, and you see all his innards fall out, and you're like, gross. That was great.
Yeah,
and,
I remember the fourth one being pretty disturbingly violent.
Yeah, there's a pretty horrible scene at the beginning where pretty sure you see someone throw a baby and then shoot it, and that's pretty horrible, but like you're establishing them that they're the terrible bad guys. And then there's like I think the beginning of the movie starts off with like a group of refugees or whatever, and the gunmen are like, you got 10 seconds to cross this field, and the people start running, and then they just mow them down, and the bad general guy's like, ha 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 ha, I hope Rambo doesn't show up. So that's the plot of that movie. And then it ends, so like while he's with the Dexter's wife, I guess, he talks about like what his life would be like if it wasn't for just murdering all the time. And he's like, I don't know, I guess I'd live in Arizona. And so at the end of the movie, he goes back to the old family farm in Arizona. And I guess he's allowed back in America now after killing all those police officers in the 80s. He's just on this American farm with like a mailbox that says Rambo, and that's how it ends.
Okay. So we go from this sort of tortured dude to action star to dark action star.
Yeah.
And then in this movie,
To the specter of death.
Rambo Last Blood has sort of gone back to the, here's a dude who's trying to be kind of low key. I'm not sure if it's his job, but it seems like he helps out with the police or like emergency services in a way that at the beginning he's trying to help some people who are caught in a flood. And then he sees this woman get completely like she must have already been hit by something or something fell on her. She's like laying in the water and she's dead. Mm-hmm. And then Rambo sees her. He finds her friend and her husband or something. And he's like, your wife's that's what he does. He said, you can't tell half of the shit that he's saying in this movie. It's my old Sylvester Stallone impression would be something like, I'm gonna talk like this. It's gonna actually make some sense. My current Sylvester Stallone impression is, Rambo. Now what you didn't realize I just said is, my name's John Rambo, and if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna hurt you real bad. But I'll tell you what, he says something like that at some point in the movie, and I had to rewind it to, what the hell is he saying here? So anyway, in this moment, he's like, which means your wife's dead. And this other guy goes like, oh no, I better go find her. Like in the middle of the flood while Sylvester Stallone's trying to save him. Now, don't get me wrong. If you just found out your wife's dead, it might be hard to take in. It might be hard to process that that's what's going on. But this guy's just like, well, I gotta go get her. Bye. Runs right back into a flood. A horse dies in this scene. I'm warning you because, I'm warning the listeners. I know Nick can handle it, but, animals dying can be rough.
Is it the horse from The Last Crusade?
Yeah, he's finally done.
Oh.
This is his retirement movie. Actually, to tell you the truth, you might not even notice that the horse dies. It's just like it's there, and then it's kind of implied. But anyway, turning up the volume, warning, does not make the mumbling any clearer. So then Rambo goes home to this like ranch. I guess he is in Arizona, and he's living with I guess it must be his wife's sister, and I think it's implied that the wife's dead. So he's raising his niece. I must have missed a line here or there that might not have been Sylvester Stallone's line, or maybe I didn't, and I just heard it as blah, 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 blah. But it took me a little while I'm like, is this supposed to be his daughter? Because the vibe here between these two does not seem like father and daughter, but they're certainly hanging out with each other a lot. And then it's his niece. It's his niece. She likes horses. They have horses. They ride together.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, and
I hope nothing terrible happens to her.
Well, you might want to watch a different movie then. And see, I have all these jokes here, but they're totally spoiled jokes because I thought you watched this. So I'm gonna have to save some of these notes for later. There's the point where Rambo references having had friends, and I guess that must be some reference to the third movie, because I was like, what? Rambo has friends? That doesn't sound right. I can't picture him hanging out with anyone. But this is definitely trying to sell the PTSD thing pretty hard. He keeps having flashbacks to this dead woman from the rain. So the daughter, or the niece, gets interested in going to Mexico to talk with her biological dad, who sort of just vanished. And he's like, and that time what I was saying was, your dad's a bad guy. And she's like, oh no, people change, you change. And he's like, I didn't change, I'm just always holding it down. Or no, he says, I'm just trying to keep a lid on it. And you better get ready to hear that phrase a lot, because for some reason, this movie that's only an hour and a half, which is fine, by the way, keeps playing him saying that over and over, like as a flashback, like this voiceover thing. And at the end of the movie, you get this too, where they're like, we're going to show you scenes from earlier. And you're like, I don't need to see that again. It's not a complicated movie. You don't need the reminders. And this, I think, is partly really to Sylvester Stallone's credit. Even though his face is not moving at all. I mean, like, I don't know if it's a plastic surgery thing or what, but like none of his face moves. So much so that other than his eyes, none of his face moves. So much so that it seems at times like it must be ADR, because his mouth is barely moving. But believe it or not, this is a compliment. His eye acting, you know how Sylvester Stallone's got those like bloodhound eyes. His eye acting,
I don't know what that means at all.
Do you know what a bloodhound looks like? Like droopy ass eyes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. I get you.
Sorry, hound dog eyes. How about that? Does that help?
Well, droopy is a hound dog.
All right. So he's got these droopy eyes, and
sure.
Oh, that's a character. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's droopy. Yeah, it's my droopy impression.
Is he a Hanna-Barbera character?
I think he's Warner Brothers.
Oh, well, then that's probably why I don't watch those cartoons. So he's doing a good job here, though. Like, in terms of his acting, I think Sylvester Stallone's actually doing a really good job in this movie, in spite of the fact that his face doesn't move at all. And we really don't need flashbacks or repeats of him saying these things, because it's already actually pretty evident. As far as selling him as, you know, trying to retire and just sort of like slowly die because he's done and he's just trying to like hang out with horses, basically, it works for me. And then the niece goes to Mexico to find her dad. Some things don't go great. There are some problems there. And then Rocky, yeah. The fifth movie's called Rocky Balboa Rambo Stallone First Last Blood. Anyway, I say that because as I was trying to think of the title for the fourth movie, I kept going, is it Rambo Balboa? Like, what's the name of the fourth movie? So anyway, so he goes to Mexico. Stuff happens. See, this is where I can't get into, I don't want to say much more about the plot. And then eventually there's action. The action is, this movie's pretty dark. So I guess while we were doing our review, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. The last Rambo movie was pretty darn dark. The first movie was pretty darn dark. And this newest one is dark. And there's just those crazy 2 action movies thrown in there. This one goes in sort of a Home Alone direction.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And the amount of stuff that this Rambo guy does, like the amount of things he puts together and uses and sharpens and practices with, is just insane. I mean, there's definitely a moment where I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that he stabs a guy with his thumb.
I play a game with my kids called The Knife, where I go like with my thumb and then tickle them like in the chest with like my thumb.
Yeah.
And then they laugh and scream. But you're saying that he actually kills a guy.
Wait a minute. Why do you call this game The Knife?
Because it's like a switchblade. You're like, because you throw your thumb out like.
Oh,
you're
I see. You're
knife.
You're making a flip your thumb up motion there while you're making the noise. I see.
Yeah. It's a visual and audible gag.
So for those of you listeners who thought we were in the same room together, you know we're not. Yeah, so yeah, kind of like that, except, through the skin.
Maybe his fingernails are real long.
I wish you had watched this, because some of these things would make a lot more sense. Okay, so in this movie, Rambo takes the idea of double tap to a whole new level. People are so dead, and he's like, I'm going to shoot you anyway. Which means I better shoot you anyway.
Right.
And boy, is it kind of silly. And it's, you said about the last one that it's mainly practical effects. This one's not. This one's got a lot of CGI blood. Oh, don't worry, Nick. You'll enjoy it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'll still be pleased, but this big third act of ridiculousness, it's very quick. You get to see all the things that are put together and assembled in action. It's pretty quick. There were a lot of things that I was like, man, I wish the camera had been on that just for another half second or so. And it gets a bit of a feel like maybe they were just saving on the budget by skimping sort of on the effects. That's why it cuts so fast from one thing to another. It's like all the action movies these days where there's fighting going on, and instead of actually choreographing it, they just do a bunch of quick cuts. It's got that going on. But I still think it was pretty entertaining. I guess I had this problem with the last movie too, maybe more with the fourth one, where the action is over the top, and so I'm sort of enjoying it on that level, but I don't know that the movie, there's no humor in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one of those over the top, so because it knows it's being over the top, and I think it does know it, but there's just no humor in it. There's just no humor in it. So like, I feel kind of gross watching it, where I'm like, this is just violence for violence's sake. It's not even violence for humor's sake.
The fourth one has no joy.
Oh yeah,
at all. There is nothing positive about it.
Yeah,
at all.
And there's no joy in this movie too. And what I think this movie actually does best is that if you're here for the action, you'll get it. But in terms of like actual credit for like what's the strongest part of the movie, it's probably Sylvester Stallone's acting, which seems like an odd thing to say, but he does have some moments where he's doing a good job. And I think this movie actually does convey, it's written poorly, but it's acted well. It does convey this sort of worn down, dark history, kind of haunted guy. And so, props to Sylvester Stallone for that. And if you could not watch the rest of the movie and have the seriousness of it and just see the last act, that might be the ideal way to watch the last act. Because it's just nuts. It's so nuts. It's not very long. I think in the other, in the fourth movie, it's just action the whole time, right?
Like the last half, at least.
Okay. Yeah, this one I'd say maybe 20 minutes of it.
Oh.
If that might be 15 or 10, but it's a pretty short movie and I kind of enjoyed it. So, soft recommend on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
You'll definitely enjoy it.
Wow, that's all great information about Rambo Last Blood. I can't wait. All right, so that brings us to our movie rankings list for this week. And Matt, I've got your list pulled up right here.
All right.
So why don't you go first?
Cool. Let's see. The first one I am putting in place is definitely going to be Ready or Not. And I put that between 10 Cloverfield Lane and Lake Mungo.
Wow, way up there. Okay.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. And I almost wanted to put it below or in between the John Wicks, but honestly, those movies, the second one and the third one, just, I don't really want to see them again. Especially the third one, just like, I'm still kind of feeling how long it was. So I'm like, you know what? Nope, Ready or Not was fun. Felt breezy. I would give it 3.5 stars.
Okay, 3.5. All right.
And
that is a recommend.
Yeah.
I will say that I have not really had a desire to watch all of John Wick 3 again, but I really want to watch the first 20, 25 minutes of it again.
Yeah.
And then when Angelica Houston shows up, just turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember the action scene at the beginning, like the action phase at the beginning of the movie that well. But I do remember that I enjoyed it. And then the action at the end, I was like, man, this is dragging on and too long. And the whole middle is just like, man, there's a lot here that's not necessary. So I don't remember, like I don't have the images and stuff in my head. But if I could watch the first 20 minutes, I'd probably have a pretty good time too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then I'm going to put Rambo Last Blood between Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Pie Wacket.
Oh, okay. It's higher than I thought it would be, too.
Hey, there are issues with this list. Because I can scroll down right now and go, oh, yeah, those other movies don't belong below it. But you know what? That's where it's going.
How many stars for Rambo 5?
I'm going to give it 2.5 stars.
Okay.
Probably only deserves 2. But that last half a star is just, it is all Sylvester Stallone's eyes.
Okay.
And I don't know. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Sure.
Thumbs up. Okay.
Light recommend.
You had a good enough time watching it?
Light recommend, yeah.
Okay. Now I will open my list. I am going to put Klaus into the number 23 spot between Moana and Dancer in the Dark. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars and a recommend. I would have given it 4 stars, but the voice acting really kind of irked me. It's pretty distracting.
Yeah.
But it is really worth checking out. I imagine this will become like one of those Christmas classic kind of movies.
I don't know exactly what it is that you said about it that did it, but I kind of want to watch it.
Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. There's one part where I won't spoil it. I'll see how you feel about it afterwards.
All right.
Matt, anything for Midwest Matt recommends this week?
I'm gonna try this way. Nick.
Hey.
I recommend you watch It Follows or Get Out.
Okay.
Listeners, I have a new podcast to recommend to you. And actually, this is sort of a Karina recommends. She played this for me last weekend. And it's a podcast called Ologies. And it's usually about an hour long, it seems. It's kind of in between radio. It's kind of in that Radio Lab Invisibilia area. It doesn't have Lulu Miller as a producer, so it's missing that special Lulu Miller flavor, but it's still good. And the host has a good sense of humor. She does these sort of cutaway things from interviews she's doing. The show itself is about different specialties in science. So like she'll be talking to a paleontologist or a volcanologist, studies volcanoes, and just goes all over the place. And
I thought it was a Star Trek thing.
Yeah, you should listen to that episode. She makes some comments about jokes like that. It's entertaining. It's interesting. There's lots of good information in it. And like I was saying before, the host, she's got a good personality. She's great at interviewing in a really like comfortable, personable way. And then she cuts away from the interviews to like admit things or to add information. She'll jump out and be like, hey, by the way, if you want to learn more about this, check out this book. But there are times also where she's like, when she was talking to the volcanologist makes some sort of joke and she's like, and then she cuts out and she's like, I had no idea what that joke was about. So Ologies, I know I've been recommending a lot of political podcasts. If political isn't your thing and you just kind of like a good educational romp, check out Ologies. Cool.
Okay. If you want to tell us what you've seen this week, send us an email at thisweekinfilmpodcast@gmail.com or contact us on all the social networks. You can find links to all of that at our website, thisweekinfilm.com, which has not been updated in some time, but the links are there. You can figure it out. And, well, I guess if that is the end of the reel, we will see you next week.
Hey, wait a minute.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
My finger's already in the air, getting ready to point.
I was going to say we should just give a shout out to someone. There is a guy who contacted us through the social medias, and I wanted to give him a shout out.
Yeah. You're, of course, talking about that guy whose name
is a thing.
Oh, so Ivan Luciano on Twitter sent us a message saying, hey, really appreciate the show, guys. Just started listening. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it right in front of me. But his Twitter handle is @IvanDoesThings if you're interested in knowing more about Ivan. But he likes us, and we like him for that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Hey, thanks, Ivan, and thanks for getting in touch with us. That was really cool. Made my day. All right, now, if that is the end of the reel, we'll see you, now I have pointed, next week in film.
Judge movies, not people.
Bloodhound eyes.